Now today we're going to conclude Transformed. It's been a 7-week journey. Week number 1 we looked at spiritual transformation, then we looked at physical transformation. We looked at mental transformation, which is the decisions that we make. We looked at emotional transformation, which is how we deal with stress, worry, anxiety, depression. We looked at relational transformation in week 5, financial transformation last week. And this week it's vocational transformation. So I was doing a wedding a while back. I generally don't go to the rehearsal dinners, unless I know the family really well. It's just with kids, it's just really busy on Friday nights. But I knew this family very well, and I went to the rehearsal dinner. It was downtown, and I was not feeling very well. So I went to the bathroom. So a few minutes later, someone walked into the bathroom, and I could tell it was a tile floor, and I could tell the person was wearing high heels. So I knew, at this point, one of two things was going on. The less daunting thing is there was a man in the building who was wearing high heels for some reason. The other possibility is I was in the wrong bathroom. So I prayed. Now, I didn't know this, but when women go to the bathroom, they don't always go to the bathroom. This woman didn't go to the bathroom. She just stood in front of the mirror for a few minutes, and I was getting ready to escape. I still so then all of a sudden someone else walked in right when I was getting ready to leave, and this person had high heels on as well. So at this point I knew there was not two men at this restaurant wearing high heels, and I ended up in the wrong bathroom, and I finally escaped. I mean, this had incident written all over it, popular West Omaha pastor in Old Market women's restroom. So have you ever been in the wrong place before? See, I think you've probably been in the wrong place before, and it may not have been that. I hope it wasn't that place. But I think some of you, you're going to go somewhere tomorrow morning, and it's going to be 9 o'clock, and you're going to look at your watch and realize there's still 7 hours left in the day, and you're in the wrong place. It just seems like the wrong place anyway. It's not fulfilling. There's unresolved conflict. So this is part of our life, and that part of our life, this vocational part of our life, it shouldn't be the wrong place. Now, there's ways to make this a better place. We talk about vocational transformation. I talk to high school students a lot. I have a high school student. We have a ton of high school students here. I see high school students out in the community, and especially the ones who are seniors in high school. I'll typically ask them the question, so what's the plan for next year? Yeah, usually, some of the kids, they just have this laser focus of what they're going to do. I'm going to go to Iowa State University, who's figured out how to play football in the last 3 weeks, apparently. I'm going to go to Iowa State University, and I'm going to study engineering. I'm going to go to Wayne State, and I'm going to be a teacher. I look at these, 17, 18-year-old kids. I think that is so cool that they, at this point in their life, know what they're going to do. Then there's some that I talk to, and, they don't have a clue. That's fine. If that's you, that's fine. I have a very expensive sheet of paper I own. It's an economics degree from Drake University. As you can tell, that's serving me really well right now. They don't even let me be on the finance committee here after 5 years of training. I can't handle money. I can do everything else except that. And I wanted to be an attorney, and all of a sudden, I'm a pastor, and things change. Okay. So if you're not there yet, whether you're 18 years old or you're 58 years old, it's fine. So here's what I like to do. I think a lot of us, how we're wired, we think linearly. So I am here. God wants me to be here. So there's this map, this really specific map that God is going to give to me to get from point A to point B. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case for most of us. I don't think it's this really specific map. I think it's more like a canvas with a bunch of colors and some knives and some paintbrushes. And we're the one that gets to create the portrait. We're the one that gets to draw the picture. Yeah, I do this sometimes. There was a young woman in my office, and she was, kind of wondering, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I said, well, let's just do this. I want you to imagine you have this 3x5 blank sheet of canvas in front of you. And you have all the colors you need. You have the knives and you have the brushes. And I asked her, I said, what's the first color that you would dip into? And she thought about it for a second, and she's like, it's blue. I'd do blue. So why did you do blue? Why would you pick blue? And she said, as I paint this picture, I just see blue skies, and I love blue skies. I said, well, what color would you do next? You got a blue sky, what color would you do next? And she says, I'd pick green. I'm like, well, what would you paint with the green? And she says, I'd paint grass, and I'd paint trees, because I love green grass, and I love green trees. So I said, okay, as you look at your life in the future, what else would you paint? And we got to a building that she was going to create, and the building was gray. And after about 10 minutes of this, that's where she got stuck. She could go no further than that. And she said, I'm sorry, I can't go any further. I said, no, don't be sorry, this is where you are. Do you see this is where you're at in your life right now? You're painting the picture, but the picture's not created yet. It's not done. Do you ever watch the painter on TV, Bob Ross? So I love Bob Ross, and there's actually a kid. Hopefully you get to see the kid. There's a kid today whose costume is Bob Ross. Got the big hair. I was just thinking about this a little bit ago on the palette. And so, you know how Bob Ross all of a sudden, he's painting a lake, and he's like, I don't really like this lake. I'm going to paint a mountain here instead. So all of a sudden, the lake becomes a mountain. And that's the really cool thing about thinking about life as a canvas. It's not this point A to point B direction with no room for error. It's okay, we try something for a while, it doesn't work. You just paint over that, and you figure out what eventually works. And in the end, you get something that's absolutely stunning and absolutely beautiful. So the word vocation, in the Latin, I'm going to impress you all with my rudimentary knowledge of Latin here. It comes from the Latin word vocare, which really just means what God calls you to do. For some people, a vocation could be a job. For some people, a vocation can be where you volunteer, where you put your best time, where you put your best energy, where you put your best money. So an example might be if you're an insurance agent, you could see that as a vocation. And here's why. You sold someone a life insurance policy that you believe in, because what you want to do is you want to give people a peace of mind, and you want to give people this comfort, knowing if they're not around to take care of their people, then that's already in place for them. And when everyone else is coming around wanting money because the dead person is deceased, you're the one that gets to knock on the door and deliver a check. So maybe you see that job as a vocation. You could be a police officer, and you see your job as a vocation because you're going to get these people who aren't thinking well off the streets and into some rehabilitation where they can start thinking and acting well. So if you're a police officer, that could be your vocation. Now, Chris Syme, who's up here, I think he sells computer software. Now, that's great. It's what he does. Now, I would say that Chris's vocation is doing this stuff on Uganda. He spends a ton of time on it. He spends a ton of energy. He spends a ton of money, doing these things. Now, here's what vocation is, okay? Vocation is the place, and if you haven't heard anything yet and you're not going to listen for the rest of the time, just give me 30 seconds here. Vocation is the place where God calls you to combine your deep gladness, your joy, your passions, and your experiences with the hunger and the thirst and the brokenness of the world. It's what you love to do, and it's what you do best. Merging and combining with where the world is hurting. That is vocation at its absolute finest. So Jesus, in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 16, verse 26, he says, what does it profit? What does it profit for a person to gain the whole world and yet forfeit your soul? Then he continues, I don't think it's on the screen behind me, but he continues, and he asks the question, is there anything that's worth more than your soul? So here's the deal, like the world is out there for the taking. If you're smart enough, and if you're creative enough, and if you're connected to the right people, and if you work hard enough, I believe there's very little that you can't achieve. But Jesus still has a question for you. What does it profit to gain the whole world, but forfeit your soul in the process? Is there anything that's more important than your soul? So today we're going to look at some principles of what this looks like to have vocational health. You know, to be world changers, to be providers, to be encouragers, and at this simultaneously, develop our soul. This important part of our persona. So number one, whatever you do it with what? All right, so do it with passion. So have you all ever heard of Johnny the Bagger before? So what I want you to do, if you got some free time, just Google Johnny the Bagger. It's an amazing story. So Johnny worked at a grocery store. It was in the South, I think, and they had a train at this grocery store, and the woman was really good, and she'll be on the video so you would watch. And she just said, like, you don't like check people out. You don't, stock shelves. What you do with this grocery store is you make somebody's day. And like she challenged them all to go back and make somebody's day. So this guy, Johnny, took her very seriously. Johnny has Down syndrome. Johnny was one of the guys that ran one of the checkout lanes. And he went home and he talked to his parents. He was, I think, in his probably 20s or 30s at the time. And he said that he wanted to make somebody's day every day at the grocery store. So he came up with this idea that he was going to give all his customers a thought of the day. So he would go home and he would write something down. If he wouldn't come up with something on his own, he'd just search the internet and find something. And what he does every night is he, on 50 sheets of paper, 6 thoughts per sheet of paper for a total of 300 thoughts a day, is he'll print them out, he'll cut them up, he'll sign them. And he started doing this, and all of a sudden, guess what happened at the grocery store? He wasn't the fastest, but he became by far the most popular cashier. And people would be lined up like 10, 12, 14 deep sometimes, just to go through his line and get his thought of the day. People would say that they used to come to the store like once a week to get stuff. Now all of a sudden they were coming like 4 or 5 times a week to get Johnny's thought of the day. Now this became infectious throughout the store. So one of the meat guys, how they wrap the meat up and give you the price. This guy loves Snoopy, so he ordered 50,000 Snoopy stickers. On every thing of meat you'd buy from him, he'd put the Snoopy sticker on there. There's a woman who worked in the floral department, and I guess there's a lot of waste that goes on in the floral department, like you're chopping stuff up and it doesn't look quite right, so you throw stuff away. And she said instead of throwing all these beautiful flowers away, what they started doing was giving them to the elderly shoppers at the store. Now all of a sudden, you have all these people doing what they do with passion. It's not a place where you go buy food. It's a place where you go to get flowers and get a thought of the day and smile when you see the Snoopy sticker on your hamburger. So Paul says, whatever you do it with, do it with all your heart. Now, if you're the boss, if you're the owner, whatever you like, when your direct reports are working, do it with all your heart. Give them everything. If you're a student here and you come through these doors, give everything you got. If you're a teacher that teaches in this building or someone, at this building, there's 2,600 students who walk in Monday through Friday. Teach every single one of them that you interact with everything that you got. Number 2, whatever you do it with a good attitude. All right, so some of you are going to know the woman I'm talking about. So I've dropped my kids off now at Willowdale Elementary for 12 years. So that's a long time, and I've spent a lot of time in that 100 square meters of concrete there. And the last few years, this year I knew something was missing. And it took me a few days to figure out what it was. The last few years there's a paraprofessional there, and my understanding is that she just works with one student who's legally blind, and he goes to Russell this year, I've heard. But she was out there in the main crosswalk area every day. Now, everyone else I've ever talked to that has crosswalk duty isn't a really big fan. But this woman, I can never, ever, ever recall going by her without this great big smile on her face. It's okay, I'm going to do this job. I'm going to monitor these 5th graders and all these angry parents who are acting like 2nd graders. I'm going to do this with a really good attitude, because doing this with a really good attitude beats doing this with a not really good attitude. And the Bible here says, never be lazy in your work, but serve the Lord enthusiastically. So guess what? You woke up this morning, and there's a lot of things that you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose whether it's sunny or if it's cloudy. You don't get to choose if it's warm or if it's cold. You don't get to choose if it's calm or if it's windy. You don't get to choose how the people around you are going to act. You don't get to choose oftentimes how you physically feel, but there's one thing that you can choose, and that one thing that you can choose is your attitude. You can wake up and you can say, okay, I got crossing guard duty today. I'm not going to be thrilled about this. But you know what? I'm going to have a good attitude, because having a good attitude doing a difficult task is a lot better than having a bad attitude doing a difficult task. Would you rather be around someone with a good attitude or someone with a bad attitude? So if you want to make friends, if you want to influence people, if you want to be a blessing to other people, have a good attitude, it's your choice. You get to choose it. It's nobody else's choice. It's not based upon environmental conditions. It's based upon you. You get to choose your attitude. Number 3, whatever you do it for who? Yeah, so whatever you do it for God. Wouldn't it be cool if God was your boss? That'd be really cool. You're not trying to please people. You're not trying to win the approval of others. You're just doing what you do for God and for God alone. So I do a lot of weddings. I think I've done 9 of them in the last 8 weeks. Got one more next week that I'm done for the rest of the year. Let's say if you get the bright idea you want to get married by December 31st, in which case let me know and we can probably work that out. So we I know the wedding ladies at the church, and I know the DJs. We all kind of have this little secret society. So there's this one DJ that I just love to work with. I worked with for the first time probably about 7-8 years ago, and he is just this amazing man. I've probably done a dozen weddings with him or so, and probably about after 6 or 7, I finally just said, okay, so you're different than any other DJ I've ever worked with. You love what you do. I love what I do. I said, you had got passion. Oh, I got great passion for this thing. And he's like, Craig, and he's a Christian, and I didn't know that at the time. He says, in the Bible, what was the biggest party of the year? This was a wedding. He says, how many times do a lot of people get married? Once. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to do this night, and I'm going to do it for the glory of God, and I'm going to do it in honor of God's too. And he does all this really cool stuff, and I'm long gone before he starts spinning the records. If you're Norwegian and you're a pastor, and if you're a Norwegian pastor specifically, you're not supposed to dance. It's just not good for those people around you. But man, when he does it, he's not doing it for the bride and the groom. He's doing it for God. And here's what happens, though. When you start doing stuff for God, the byproduct is that you can do it 10 times better than if you're doing it for somebody else. It just it exudes, it flows from us. So work hard and cheerfully at whatever you do, as though you were working for who? Yeah, the Lord, rather than for people. just like do it for the Lord. Like if you're a teacher at this school and these 2,600 kids come in here, like treat every single one of them like the beloved child of God that they are. If your vocation is serving donuts at our donut table, serve every single person like a hungry child of God that they are. The next one, whatever you do, concentrate on building your character. So this would probably be the second thing that I want you to hear today, other than the definition of vocation. I really want you to hear this part. I don't think that God is overly concerned with what you do. I know that God is overly concerned at who you are becoming. I just really believe that. I really do. When I was a pastor in Northwest Iowa, I was new to the town and I didn't really know where to go get my hair cut. There was a place in the main street, and it had a little barber thing out there, so I figured it was a pretty safe bet I could get my hair cut there. And I went back, and probably the worst haircut I've ever got in my life. But I was there for 3 years. I get my hair cut once a month, and this guy cut my hair 36 times. Because when I sat in his chair, I was somebody special. There's the guys who are always in there reading the newspaper. But when I was in his chair, Ira was his name. Ira, he treated me like I was the only person in the room. Cut my hair, all this crooked stuff. That's how I started doing this stuff. I just had to fix what he was doing. But man, I just thought his character was off the charts. I don't think God cared if he sold paint or held babies or cut hair, but God was concerned with his character, and his character to me was flawless. So from 1 Samuel chapter 16, but the Lord said to Samuel, just stop reading for a second. So here God's talking to Samuel, but God is this morning talking to Bill. God's talking to Carla. God's talking to Chuck. God's talking to Matt. God's talking to Craig. This was not specific to Samuel. This is to all of us. But the Lord said to Samuel, to whoever, to all of us, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I've rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. Now, take to heart this last sentence here. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at so, what you do, it's cool. It's fine with God, but who you're becoming is absolutely critical and essential. Next one. Whatever you do, care about the people you work with. So you can change this one as early as tomorrow morning. If you work today, you can change this one as early as today. Regardless of what you do, your vocation can be caring for the people that you work with. That's just something that you can do. I actually had a real job for 3 years. From the time I was 22 to the time I was 25, I worked at a newspaper in Lexington, Kentucky. So there was 3 of us on my team. There was me, there was Scott, who was an older guy, kind of a grumpy guy, but a real nice guy. Then there was Jamie. She was in her mid-30s, and she was going places, brilliant, charming. And the 3 of us were the team, and then we had a woman who helped us out, our assistant. Her name was Betty. Betty did a better job of caring for people, probably almost as much as anyone I've ever met. She would come early. She would love us. She would serve us. She was just there's one time that Scott and Jamie got into a fight, not a fist fight. Scott could have gotten in trouble for that one. But they just got into it, they didn't agree on something, and I was trying to stay out of it, and all of a sudden Betty came into the office. All three of us just shared an office, and Betty was right outside. And she looked at me and she says, "Craig, you need to go somewhere." I said, "Where's that, Betty?" She said, "Somewhere." I said, "Okay." So I left. When your assistant tells you to do something, you do it. So I got the story after it happened. Betty just came in and she sat down with Scott and Jamie, and she said, "Okay, this conflict is done. You guys are done fighting. Like, it happened, it's over. You both have some ownership. From this point forward, you're going to get along. Are you cool?" Scott's like, "Yeah, I'm cool." Jamie's like, "Yeah, I'm cool too." Now, you know the reason this worked? Like, why she was able to do that? Is because she had earned the right to be heard. When Betty tells me to go somewhere, I went somewhere. When she tells Scott and Jamie that they need to get along, they get along because this woman cared for us. You know, there wasn't a birthday, there wasn't a special day that went by that she didn't go over the top. Ephesians says, always be humble and gentle. What's the next word? Would that help in your workplace? Just a quick poll here. Be patient with each other. Making allowance for each other's what? Yeah, do not expect perfection out of people. Two things are going to happen. Number one is you're going to be disappointed because there's no perfect people that's going to meet your perfect expectations. And then the person that you're asking perfection of, they're going to get all anxious because they're not good enough to meet your demands. So just make allowance for each other's faults. Just got a couple of them left. Whatever you do, keep learning and growing. So I'm going to talk about another church father. His name's Martin Luther. Any Lutherans in here? So today's a big day for y'all. 500 years ago today, Martin Luther had these 95 theses, his critique of the church, and he nailed them to the door of the cathedral. And the world has never been the same since. You know, the Catholic Church had this reform because of his critique of them. And this whole new branch of Christianity was started as well. Now, Martin Luther, he wanted to be an attorney as well. God called him to be a pastor. And he never stopped growing. He never stopped learning. And it was this learning that changed the church. And if you change the church, you change the world. You know, Martin Luther, perhaps his biggest contribution to the world is he started to translate the Bible. He translated the Bible from the original Greek and Hebrew into German. So for the first time ever, 500 years ago, the average people, not just the priests, the average people were able to open up the scriptures and read things like, we are saved by grace through faith. It's something you've done, but it's a gift that is given freely to us from Christ himself. You know, it's just amazing. He never stopped learning. And let's go to Ecclesiastes 10:10. Using a dull axe requires great strength. And there is too many of us that are walking around life with a dull axe. It's causing us way too much energy. We're spending too much force on this. So sharpen the blade. You know, the way you sharpen the blade is you learn, you read, you listen, you observe, you get feedback. That's the value of wisdom. It will help you succeed. Now, the last thing that you do is whatever you do, you exceed expectations. So my garage door broke this summer. And I'm totally incapable of fixing. Like, it's got that big spring, you know, that has like 1 million pounds of tension on it or something like that. And so I called the garage door guy. I got a referral from a real estate guy I knew. And this guy was there within a day. So not only did he fix the garage door that was broke, he says, I'm going to look at your other one too. And he did some adjustments on that, didn't charge me for it. And those little things, like at the bottom, you know, there's always like a shovel or a football in the way, and the garage door never shuts. He changed all those for us. So if anyone ever comes up to me and has my garage door broke, whose number do you think I'm going to give him? The garage door guy. He exceeded my expectations by 1,000,000%. So if anyone requires you to go 1 mile, you go 2 miles with him. So this is what Jesus did. Jesus, he exceeded expectations. You know, Jesus was one that grew and learned. The Bible tells us stories about this boy who hung out in the temple. Jesus, he cared for his co-workers. If there's ever been 12 people who were cared for, it was those 12 disciples. You know, Jesus did all these things and then some. And what's really interesting about Jesus is, at this point in his life right here, the canvas, the painting, is about 98% done. There's just one more day in his life. Now, it does happen to be the most important day in human history. But up to this point, you know, the disciples, they had seen this painting. You know, it's like they had watched the Bob Ross. It was a 3-year painting that they saw being created. So Jesus says to them, this is my body. He blessed the bread, he broke it, and said, this is my body. As you eat this, do so in remembrance of me. And later in the meal, Jesus, he gave them a glimpse of what the rest of the painting was going to look like. You know, the rest of the painting, the color red was going to be predominant. You know, there'd be a cross, there'd be a hill, there'd be people who were mocking him and people who eventually killed him. The red would be significant of his blood. And Jesus, as he gave this picture of the rest of the painting, he said, this is my blood. It's the blood of the new covenant that has been poured out for you in the forgiveness of your sin. When you drink of this, do so in remembrance of me. You know, as we come forward this morning, I want you to remember the vocationally perfect Jesus. So he actually had a vocation. He was a carpenter by trade. But his vocation was loving people into a relationship with him. That's what he did with his words. That's what he did with his actions, including that final action where he died on a cross for all of us. Yeah, me a sinner, you a sinner, all of us sinners. Jesus has given us freedom. You know, he's given us forgiveness, and I really hope that as we remember him, we remember what he did, both in his life and in his death, for each of us. So let's pray. Almighty God, we come and we give you great thanks on this historic day as we live out this faith that has been handed down to us through the reformers and through the apostles and through the saints, and ultimately through you, the giver of grace. God, help us as your children to come to this table. Lord, we come as pilgrims on a journey. And God, I just pray that you're speaking to us right now, or some really specific things that we can do to experience vocational transformation. And Lord, as we take the bread and dip it into the juice, I pray that for all of us sinners, that we can experience the freedom and the forgiveness that you offer to us. Lord, open up our hearts and our hands and our minds so that we can experience more of you. Lord, forgive us of our past. Empower us for today and give us hope for a bright future tomorrow and in the days to come. And now, Lord, in one voice, we pray the prayer that you taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.